Wow, this rain is absolutely relentless. It's like the sky has been torn wide open. The rain pounding against the window was so fierce that the old gas station roof felt like it might collapse at any second, if that tells you anything. 2 o'clock in the morning, somewhere on an outer highway. At this hour, in the corner of this desolate gas station, where not even a stray ant is in sight, the only things awake are the sound of the rain beating down like crazy, myself, and the musty scent of a widower living alone for 3 years. Oh, honey, the nights are so long since you've been gone, aren't they? My wife in the photo offers no answer, just smiling as brightly as that spring day 3 years ago, and I keep bowing my head, feeling guilty for that smile. To be honest, just because a man is over 50 doesn't mean his desires all die out. Sitting alone in the office, soaked in the smell of oil on a rainy night, my body felt stiff and my heart felt empty for no reason, so I couldn't get a wink of sleep. I was a truck driver for over 20 years, roaming all across the country. My 25-ton truck was my home and my bedroom. But after losing my wife 3 years ago, all the energy to drive that big truck just vanished. So I sold my beloved truck and came to this remote highway gas station as a night attendant with no ties to anyone. I thought if I lived by turning my back on the world, filling up a few tanks while others were asleep, the lump in my chest might settle down. But guess what? Loneliness is even more stubborn than oil stains. It just won't wash away. The framed photo of my wife on the old desk looks exceptionally sad today. The woman who just kept smiling so she wouldn't be a burden to me, even while suffering through her battle with cancer. Living like a madman to pay for hospital bills and truck installments, I never properly held her hand, and now that haunts me like a lifetime regret. Honey, I wonder if I'm even doing this right. I just want to be by your side as soon as possible, but the sound of the rain grows louder and the old fluorescent light flickers as if mocking my pathetic situation. I leaned my chair back and was just about to light a damp cigarette. I saw something moving in the pitch-black darkness beyond the station. At first I thought it was a stray cat, or maybe a pile of trash blowing in the rain. But it wasn't. There was a figure staggering on 2 feet crossing the yard of this darkened gas station. In this downpour, on this deserted highway at this hour, there shouldn't be a soul around. My spine went cold. A robber? Or a ghost lost in the nearby mountains? I instinctively grabbed the monkey wrench I kept under my desk. I'd had it since my trucking days, so it fit perfectly in my hand. My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. The figure slowly approached the office glass door. The moment lightning flashed across the sky, I almost dropped my wrench. There was a woman standing there, without an umbrella, taking in all that harsh rain with her whole body. The moment I saw her appearance, I gasped for breath. She wore only a thin, see-through floral dress which was soaked through, making the flimsy fabric cling to her body. Her face was pale as a corpse, but her lips were painted bright red. It was obvious she was either a woman with a troubled past or someone who had hit rock bottom. I cleared my throat loudly and cautiously approached the door. I checked outside through the crack in the chain-locked door. The woman seemed to have run out of energy, barely holding onto the door handle to stay upright. "Who are you? Why are you at a gas station at this hour?" I hadn't even finished speaking. The woman pressed her wet face right up against the glass door. The smell of old cosmetics mixed with the rain hit my nose, and it was strangely stimulating yet chilling. Her eyes were unfocused and her lips were trembling, perhaps from the cold or from fear. "Sir, please, just open the door for a second." Her voice was completely raspy. The moment I saw her desperate eyes as if she might collapse at any moment, 50,000 thoughts raced through my head. A shallow curiosity and the long-starved desires of a man began to stir. Unaware of the catastrophe it would bring, I began to undo the door lock with trembling hands. Just as the door was about to click open, the woman stared directly into my eyes and whispered very softly. Yet it rang in my ears as loudly as a thunder. "Sir, if you give me 30,001, I'll do anything you tell me to." "Please, sir. Please." The door. That frail voice pierced through the sound of the rain and struck my ears, sounding exactly like a scream for help. It's strange, though. Even while my brain was telling me to be careful, and thinking that this might be a trap, my hand was already turning the door handle. I'm Kim Young-soo, someone who's seen it all while living on the asphalt for over 20 years. But that night, I was clearly possessed by something. As soon as I clicked the lock open, the glass door swung wide, as if it had been waiting. Along with the driving rain, the woman stumbled into the office as if she were collapsing. Bang! As the door slammed shut, the cramped office was instantly filled with a strange atmosphere. The foul stench of rainwater, the smell of cheap cosmetics, and the trembling breath of the woman hiding behind it all. Oh dear, look at you, completely drenched in the rain. Up close, the woman looked absolutely wretched. She was in a much worse state than I had briefly caught sight of outside. Her thin floral dress was so soaked that it clung to her body, revealing her figure in a way that felt almost embarrassing. With the wet fabric pressed against her skin, how could a lonely man over 50 not feel his heart race? I found myself swallowing hard without even realizing it. The woman stood there, water dripping onto the floor, and she was barefoot, with no shoes on. Her toes, caked in muddy water, were pale and frozen. And what about her face? Her mascara had run from the rain, leaving dark, deathly circles under her eyes. She looked like a ghost, or perhaps an actress, with a tragic past. Sir, please, just for a moment, let me stay here." The woman hunched her shoulders and watched me warily. Her red lips were trembling, and she looked so pitiful that the wicked thoughts I'd had just a moment ago completely vanished. No, to be honest, she was actually quite pretty. She looked about my age or a little younger, and though she seemed to have suffered, her features were definitely above average. "Now, where did you come from at this hour without even an umbrella? It doesn't look like you have a car either," I asked, feigning a stern tone. All the while I kept glancing at the yard, just in case an accomplice might pop out from the darkness. But outside, there was nothing but the sound of the rain lashing down like crazy. Only the gas pumps stood solitary, reflected in the glow of the streetlights. The woman couldn't even answer me. She kept glancing back toward the entrance. It was as if someone were coming from behind to choke the life out of her. That desperate, terror-stricken gaze is... In my 20 years of driving trucks, I'd never seen eyes like that. Those weren't the eyes of someone simply escaping the rain. They were the eyes of a beast that had barely crawled out of the pits of hell. Sir, I'm telling you the truth. Just give me 30,000 won, and I'll do whatever you ask. Please just lock the door again. She clung to me as if grasping at the hem of my trousers. Her cold hands touched my legs and it sent shivers down my spine. 30,000 won? To think she'd throw herself away for a sum that would barely cover a meal and coffee in this day and age. My mind grew complicated again. A beautiful woman appearing in the rain on a night steeped in loneliness, and the cheap temptation of only 30,000 won. I had no way of knowing who she was or where she came from. But one thing was certain. I had an intuition that if I sent her back out that door, she wouldn't survive the night. And my own desires were using that intuition as an excuse to pull her deeper inside. Come on inside for a moment, Inderiwaned. You're gonna catch a cold. I reached out to put my arm around her shoulder. But the moment I did, I felt her body flinch noticeably and pull away. As if she were someone who had been abused before. I had some lewd thoughts, but I guided her to the old sofa anyway. The gas station doors were now locked tight, and it was just the two of us in the small office. Outside, the rain was still pouring down incessantly. I found a towel, handed it to her, and began to look closely at her face. Without even guessing the real reason why she had brought up the sum of 30,000 won. Sir, I just need 30,000 won. For 30,000 won, I'll really do whatever you tell me to do. The woman said it again as if to drive the point home. Her voice didn't get buried by the rain, but echoed in my ears, making my head spin. In this day and age, is 30,000 won even money? Isn't that just what you spend on a meal and some snacks at a highway rest stop? But to have a decent-looking woman show up in the middle of the night, soaking wet, and say something like that, it was baffling. I'll be honest with you. I'm no saint. I lost my wife 3 years ago, and I'm just a lonely widower who spends his nights in this desolate gas station looking at her photo and soothing myself with a glass of soju. Just because a man is past a certain age, does desire just disappear? The rain was pouring down. We were alone in the tiny office, and seeing the silhouette of her floral dress clinging to her wet body made me feel heavy and stirred my animal instincts. 30,000 won, just 30,000 won? An alarm bell rang in my head. Young-soo, this is dangerous. Would a woman with no issues be doing this hour? But the scene right in front of me silenced that alarm instantly. Her shoulders translucent through her wet clothes and her frail frame shivering from the cold, it was enough to drive a man crazy. Along with a strange curiosity, I thought, to hell with it. The wicked thought that I'm a man too began to eat away at my reason. Hey, is it really just 30,000 won? Is it true that you'll do whatever I say? My voice trembled thinly without me even realizing it. I asked as if acting composed, but inside I was already swallowing hard. The woman didn't avoid my gaze and stared right back at me. Her eyes were truly peculiar. It was as if she were seducing me, yet it also felt like she was on the verge of tears, which played with my heart. Yes, sir, I really mean it. So please just let me stay here. You just have to keep the door locked. The woman seemed more desperate for the space inside this door than for the 30,000 won. But even then, I hadn't properly read the fear in her eyes. I just thought of it as an unexpected bit of luck to soothe the loneliness of the night. I've been driving trucks for over 20 years and seen all kinds of people, but I'd never seen a woman push her way in like this. Her scent, a mix of a cheap perfume and rainwater, filled the office, and my heart began to race like a pump. All right, come on in for now. The rain and wind outside are too strong. I pretended to be generous and led the woman further into the back. Inside the office, there was a small cot where I would close my eyes at night. With every step she took, the woman left muddy footprints on the floor. Seeing her white, bare feet soaked in muddy water made my heart ache, but at the same time, I felt a strange, sadistic desire. Humans are truly so deceitful. I sat her down on the edge of the cot and rummaged through my drawer. I saw a 50,000 won bill I'd tucked away for emergencies, but I deliberately chose 3 10,000 won bills instead. For some reason, it felt like I should. As I held the crisp bills out to her, her hand reached out, as if craving them. Here, 30,000 won. The money you asked for. As soon as she took the money, she clutched it to her chest as if it were a precious treasure. Then she hung her head low, and her shoulders began to heave. I couldn't tell if she was saying thank you or crying, because she was miserable about her situation. I swallowed hard and sat down, close beside her. I've given you the money, so shouldn't we do what we promised earlier? My hand slowly moved toward her wet shoulder. With a touch of cold rainwater, her skin made contact with my fingertips. The sensation of her skin felt so foreign to my rough palms, which had only gripped a truck steering wheel for 20 years. Feeling a woman's body heat for the first time in 3 years made my mind go blank. The woman didn't resist. She only trembled slightly every time my hand touched her. I tucked her wet hair behind her ear and brought my face close to hers. Up close, her face was streaked with smeared makeup, but the eyes peering through it looked truly sad. The thought that I could do whatever I wanted with this woman tonight paralyzed my reason. What's your name? Where are you from? In response to my questions, she bit her lip hard instead of answering. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she brought her trembling hand toward the zipper of her dress. Boss, I keep my promises. With that, her fingers trembled slightly as she grabbed the zipper. The zipper, stiff from being soaked in rainwater, began to slide down, very slowly with a raspy sound. My eyes were fixed on whatever was about to be revealed through that gap, and a suffocating silence filled the office, so heavy that even the sound of the rain faded away. Finally, her pale skin began to show little by little. But at that very moment, I saw it. Under the bright fluorescent light, something ominous slowly spread through her thin dress and over the fabric that had become transparent. From the rain, something thick, not rainwater, was seeping out. I hadn't seen it properly outside because it was dark, but under the pale office lights it was clear that something was terribly wrong. Just as the woman hesitated to pull the zipper down further, my gaze shifted to her slender forearm. The sleeve of her thin floral dress was soaked with rain and clung to her skin, and between those pink flower patterns, a thick red liquid was seeping through. At first, I thought she had just stained her clothes with something. But that wasn't it. The rainwater flowed down transparently, while that red substance spread slowly and deeply, trickling down her white arm. It was clearly blood. Hey, what happened to your arm? Are you hurt? Startled, I shouted and grabbed her arm. The woman let out a scream and jerked her body violently. She looked as if I had pressed a red-hot iron against her skin. Her arm, which touched my hand, was ice cold, yet the blood, flowing over it, still held a lukewarm warmth. And no, boss, it's nothing. I just tripped and fell. The woman hurriedly pulled her sleeve down, trying to hide the wound. But it was already too late, because the red blood was already spreading over the wet fabric as if swallowing the floral pattern. My heart sank deep into my chest. The cheap desires and the sleazy expectations of making 30,001 that had filled my head moments ago vanished as if doused in cold water. You can't hide the instincts sharpened from over 20 years of living on these rough streets. This was definitely not just a wound from a simple fall. But the woman's behavior was even more absurd. She couldn't even answer my questions properly, and her head kept turning toward the glass door facing the gas station yard. Outside, the rain was still pouring down in sheets, and the woman kept her eyes wide open, peering into the darkness as if a monster might jump out at any moment. Who is coming? Who are you running from? When I spoke in a low voice, the woman's pupils shook uncontrollably as if hit by an earthquake. Instead of answering, she grabbed the collar of my shirt. She squeezed so hard her knuckles turned white and her hands were trembling so violently that the vibration went straight to my chest. My chest. This wasn't just fear, it was the extreme terror of someone whose soul had been completely shattered. Sir, please, turn off the lights. We can't be seen from outside. Please, the woman begged, burying her face in my chest. The scent of fishy rainwater and blood rose from her wet hair, and it gave me goosebumps. Bang! Just then, a loud clap of thunder roared from the sky. The woman shrieked and collapsed to the floor. Covering her ears with her hands and curling into a ball, she muttered, "Don't come, please, don't come," looking exactly like a beast about to be dragged to the slaughterhouse. I grabbed a monkey wrench and walked back toward the glass door. I squinted through the dark rain, searching for any sign of a black car pulling up or someone in a raincoat approaching. Only the street light cast a blurry glow through the rain. There was no one there for now. But this woman's terror was real. It wasn't the kind of thing you could fake. Don't worry. No one can get in here. I've locked the door tight. I patted her shoulder to calm her down, but she kept gasping for air, eyes wide as if she were watching the outside. Under her thin dress, her chest heaved rapidly, and I could see red blood seeping through again, and it wasn't just her arm. It seemed like wounds were breaking open everywhere on her shoulders and back, hidden beneath her clothes. This woman wasn't just running away. She had been beaten to the brink of death by someone and had miraculously escaped from that hellish place. My mind started to grow complicated. I didn't know what might happen if I left this woman as she was. But if I called the police, she would obviously freak out and try to stop me. Hey, just calm down for a moment. Aren't you hungry? You need to eat something to get your head straight, don't you? I helped her to the sofa as she trembled. She didn't seem to hear me as she was still watching the outside, but I knew I had to snap her out of it. Seeing her wounds and terror, all the strange feelings I had earlier vanished, and I only thought about saving a person's life. With trembling hands, I opened the cabinet in the corner of the office. There was a box of choco pies and some milk I'd stashed away to eat during my night shifts. I took them out and sat down in front of her. The woman's gaze locked onto the food. Her expression shifted in an instant, like someone who hadn't seen food in her entire life. Here, have some of this at least. What is this? Are you mocking me? As soon as I handed her the 2 choco pies and the carton of milk from the cabinet, an unbelievable scene unfolded. Shari. The woman, who had been trembling like a leaf in terror just moments ago, snatched the food right out of my hand. Actually, it wasn't so much taking as it was seizing it. Her touch was so desperate to tear open the package that the sound of the thin plastic ripping echoed sharply through the office. She stuffed half of the choco pie into her mouth in one go. She didn't care that brown chocolate crumbs and white marshmallow was smearing all over her mouth as she kept shoving it down. She looked just like a stray cat that hadn't eaten in days, or perhaps a starving beast. Slow down. Please eat slowly. You're gonna choke. Drink some milk here. I opened the carton and pushed it toward her, and she poured it down like she was guzzling it. Lie. As the white milk trickled down her chin and soaked into the chest of her wet floral dress, the strange temptation I'd felt earlier vanished without a trace. Instead, I felt a heavy, suffocating tightness in the pit of my chest. Just what kind of hell did you survive to get here? I've driven trucks all across the country and seen plenty of ugly things, but I've never seen someone eat with such wretched desperation. Even with her mouth full of choco pie, her eyes were still scanning the gas station yard with intense vigilance. Even the simple act of eating looked like a desperate struggle for survival, and it made my stomach churn just watching it. Seeing her hands with dirt under her nails and rough, calloused knuckles as she reached for the next choco pie without wiping the crumbs from her face, I felt a pang of pity. I found myself clicking my tongue involuntarily. It didn't take long for me to realize that her crude offer to sell her body for 30,000 won was actually her last-ditch effort to afford a single choco pie and a gulp of milk. Hey lady, what on earth happened to you? Did someone lock you up without giving you a single bite to eat? At my question, she couldn't answer, only choking up and gasping for air. Then she suddenly started coughing, clutching her chest, and the bloodstains I'd seen on her forearm caught my eye once again. Beneath her shoulders, shaking as she hurriedly gobbled down the food, it felt as though the wounds beneath her wet dress were screaming. This woman's situation was far deeper and darker than I had imagined. It wasn't just a simple case of running from debt collectors or leaving home after a marital spat. She had been completely stripped of her human dignity by someone and had run barefoot through the rain solely to survive. The lecherous curiosity that had lingered in my heart was now completely dead. In its place, the face of my wife, who passed away 3 years ago, came to mind. That person who was foolishly kind, always, setting the table for me even when she was sick. Neck. Thinking of how I would feel if my wife were out somewhere in this state begging for a choco pie brought a rush of boiling rage and an indescribable sense of pity. I'm sorry. I had a wicked thought for a moment. Just keep the 30,000 one I gave you earlier. You don't have to do that. As I blurted that out, the woman stopped eating and stared straight at me. Was what was on her chocolate-smeared lips a tear? Or was it rainwater? For a brief fleeting moment I saw the terror in her eyes shift into something resembling gratitude. But that too was only for a moment. The woman looked down at her hands and returned to her pale expression. Then she wore a look as if she were slowly recalling the transaction she had to complete. Whether to repay my kindness or out of desperation to not lose this shelter, she reached for the zipper of her dress again. No, sir, I must keep my promise. I'm fine. Now. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. The woman's trembling voice echoed in the silent office. I tried to stop her, but her hand was already on the zipper. And the moment that zipper went down, I had to prepare myself to witness a truth far more horrific and gruesome than just a few drops of blood. Sir, I promised after all. I have to earn my keep. The woman muttered in a hoarse voice and gripped the zipper at the back of her wet dress. I tried to shout, no, I said stop. To hold her back, but her hands were faster. The sound of the zipper sliding down sharply tore through the quiet office. The zipper, stiff from the rainwater, moved slowly, very slowly, following her trembling fingertips. I'll be honest. Even at that moment, a wicked sense of anticipation flickered for a split second in a corner of my heart. Because I'm a pathetic guy who hasn't even held a woman's hand in 3 years. But that expectation turned into a horror so gruesome that I couldn't even scream the moment the dress fell off her shoulders. Hey. What on earth is all this? What erupted from my throat wasn't a gasp of excitement, but a scream. Under the fluorescent light, the woman's pale skin revealed a living hell that was hard to even look at. Bruises, dark and purple, were tangled from her shoulders to her back like a hideous map. These weren't just ordinary bruises from bumping into something. They looked like claw marks left by a beast that had been mercilessly beaten and dragged around. What froze my heart more than anything were the round scars embedded on her forearms and near her collarbone. Cigarette burns. There were 5 or 6 vivid burn marks clustered together where someone had intentionally pressed a lit cigarette into her flesh. I couldn't even dare to imagine the pain she felt as her skin burned away. This was not something one person should ever do to another. I'm sorry, sir. It's ugly, isn't it? It's disgusting, right? Startled by my gasping reaction, she hurriedly pulled up her slipping dress to cover her body. Even as she cried and apologized, her demeanor only tore at my heart even more. Why are you sorry for being beaten? Why should you be sorry for nearly being slaughtered like an animal by someone? The woman trembled, anxiously watching my reaction. But it won't get in the way of what you want to do. If we turn off the lights, you won't see them. Please, sir. You promised. You already paid me 30,000 won. She tried to lower her zipper again and pulled my hand toward her. I noticed deep, dark bruises on the back of her hand as well. I roughly slapped her hand away. Then I grabbed my thick jacket from the hanger and forced it over her shoulders. "Don't," I said, "I'm not doing it. Do you take me for a beast?" When I shouted, she looked up at me, as if frozen in place. Hot tears welled up in my eyes. It wasn't because of desire. It was the realization that such things could actually happen in this world. And I couldn't stand how shitty this woman's life was, forced to reveal these horrific wounds for a measly $30,000. Up close, the wounds were even more severe. Over the older bruises, there were fresh red wounds that seemed to have been made today. And they were still oozing. Those bloodstains I saw when she first walked into the office. They weren't just injuries, they were desperate medals of honor from throwing her whole body into an attempt to escape. What kind of bastard, what kind of son of a did this to a person? Tell me, who did this? When I asked, filled with rage. The woman clutched the jacket I'd given her tightly and bowed her head low. Through the jacket, her frail shoulders began to shake violently. The tears she had been holding back finally burst forth. The rain was still hammering against the roof like it would tear through, but in my ears, the woman's stifled sobbing sounded as loud as thunder. I puffed away, took out a cigarette and lit it. My hands were shaking so much while trying to strike the lighter that the flame kept missing the tip. Only after I managed to light it and took a deep drag of the smoke could I finally regain my composure. This woman was not just some ordinary runaway. She was a survivor who had risked her life to escape someone's twisted, malicious violence. The woman cried for a long time before lifting her head. Her face was a mess with mascara running everywhere, but her eyes now held an undeniable truth. She slowly parted her lips. Without even imagining how horrific the story about to come out of her mouth would be, I just exhaled a cloud of smoke into the air. "It's my husband. That man did this to me. My husband." At the first words out of her mouth, I nearly dropped the cigarette I was smoking. No matter how cruel the world is, I wondered how a man who sleeps under the same blanket could do this to someone. Clutching my jacket sleeve tightly, she began pouring out her sorrowful story as if a dam had burst. "He's addicted to gambling. At first he blew through our house, then my gold rings, and then he even sold off all our household goods. I endured it though. I held on, for the sake of my daughter, my only child." But her voice trembled thinly before soon, hardening with rage. That human was no person at all. Once his gambling funds ran dry, he started touching money he should never have touched. It was the tuition savings my high school senior daughter had been diligently putting away from her part-time jobs for college. When she found out and begged him while weeping, that beast started beating her like a dog from that moment on. I screamed at him to bring back the tuition money, saying our daughter couldn't go to college without it, but that man just laughed. Then, pressing a lit cigarette against my shoulder, he told me. He said I could just sell my own body to make up the difference. So this is what it feels like for your blood to boil. Driving a freight truck, I've seen all kinds of human trash, but I had never heard of or seen a guy who would ruin his own child's future and sell his wife to debt collectors. The woman's confession grew increasingly harrowing. She said the husband had invited the debt collectors into their home, and watching those men scan her and put a price on her nearly made her lose her mind. Last night, they were waiting in a car to take me away. My husband was counting the money right next to them, so I didn't think twice and just ran out the back door barefoot. I've already hidden my daughter at a friend's house, but I'm terrified that he might even track her down. That's what I'm so afraid of. The woman sobbed uncontrollably, almost as if she had lost her mind. 30,000. The money she was so desperately asking for wasn't payment for selling her body. It was bus fare to escape to an acquaintance in Busan, money for a payphone to call her daughter, and a lifeline to flee from her beast of a husband, ili husband. Sir, I'm such a worthless person. As a mother, I couldn't even keep my daughter's tuition safe, and now I'm just running away. I should have just died back then. Watching her tear at her chest in self-reproach, my own heart felt like it was being ripped to shreds. I was reminded of my wife who passed away 3 years ago. She endured so much pain without complaining, just to keep from being a burden to me. Yet this woman, living in a hell on earth, beaten until her body felt like it would break, worries about her child. I cursed at the empty air, wondering how the world had become like this. Don't cry. Why should you be the one to feel like a sinner? That bastard, that son of a, is the only sinner here. I clenched my fist tightly. I tightened my grip on the monkey wrench in my hand. If that husband showed up right now, I felt like I would smash his head in. Was it the sense of justice buried deep within me after over 20 years of living a rough life as a trucker? Or was it the projection of my longing for my late wife? I decided right then that I would never let this woman leave like this. After sobbing for a long time, the woman buried her face in my jacket and caught her breath. The torrential rain hammered against the gas station roof, and the sound kept making me look back as if it were that husband knocking on the door. Don't worry. I'm here now, and I won't let anyone step foot through this door. I gripped her shoulders firmly. Perhaps calmed by my rough comfort, her shaky breathing began to steady. The air in the office was still heavy and still, but for this moment at least it must have been the safest fortress in the world for her. But that peace didn't last long. It was the very moment her sobbing died down, and I tried to stand up to make her another cup of warm coffee. The station's landline, not my mobile phone, began to scream across the silent office like a sharp blade. Leisha, isa. Who on earth would be calling this remote gas station at 2 a.m? The woman's eyes were once again clouded with terror. The sound of the gas station telephone cutting through the silence was so sharp it felt like it was piercing my heart with an awe. Who would be calling a remote gas station on a highway at 2:30 a.m? And the woman, who had just managed to calm down while covered in my jacket, gasped and fell backward. Her eyes were already beyond fear, bordering on a seizure. Sir, don't answer it. Please don't answer it. The woman grabbed the hem of my pants and begged. But I am the manager of this station. Afraid it might be the head office or the owner calling about an emergency. I reached out with a trembling hand and picked up the receiver. The caller ID screen coldly displayed only the words blocked number. Hello? This is the gas station. My voice trembled helplessly. There was no answer from the other side for a moment. Only the static of the line and the sound of the pouring rain could be heard. As the silence grew, cold sweat ran down my spine. Then, suddenly, a chilling laugh that sounded like scraping metal filled my ear. Hey, you sound terrified hearing an old man's voice. It was a low, raspy, yet deranged man's voice. The moment she heard it, the woman beside me covered her mouth and collapsed to the floor. It was definitely her husband, that beast of a man. Who are you? What kind of rude behavior is this, calling someone's workplace at this hour? I shouted, trying to sound authoritative. I raised my voice on purpose so he wouldn't realize I was scared. But the man on the other end didn't flinch and continued with a smirk in his voice. Hey, old man. My wife in the floral dress is there, right? What? That thing that's soaking wet from the rain and shivering. Isn't she sitting on your office sofa right now, stuffing her face with a choco pie? My hair stood on end and it felt like the blood in my body had frozen solid. How could he possibly know that? It was pitch black outside and raining so hard you couldn't see an inch yet. He knew exactly that she was eating a choco pie. Where the hell are you watching us from, Hachi? I clutched the receiver and frantically scanned the window. The dark station yard, under the faint street lights, was empty, save for the pouring rain. But he was clearly watching us from somewhere. Don't play the hero, old man, Nan. That woman is a piece of property I already sold for cash. Don't you know you'll lose your wrist if you mess with someone else's property? Push her outside right now, Mao, now. Otherwise I'll turn this whole gas station into a sea of fire. There was not a hint of hesitation in the man's voice. He sounded like he really meant it. The woman grabbed my leg, begging for mercy. She was letting out a silent scream, pleading to be saved. The man continued his mocking threats as if he knew exactly where Mission was hiding and even what look was on my face. Be-e-sionatas. You're holding a monkey wrench right now, aren't you? Put it down. You can't beat me with that. I've parked my car on the highway shoulder by the gas station entrance and I'm watching you. You know that if a lighter sparks even once, this gas station goes up in an instant, right? Right? The man's maniacal voice filled the office. Terrified, I peered through the glass as if looking into a rear-view mirror. Far off in the darkness of the highway, I could dimly make out the shape of a black van sitting like a ghost with its headlights off. They had already surrounded us. Hey, are you out of your mind? There's gasoline here. You'll die too. What's so special about dying? If there's no money, it's all over anyway. All right, I'll give you 1 minute. Send her out. Click. The call was disconnected. The beeping sound of the dial tone felt like the ticking of a bomb. The woman burrowed into my chest, trembling like a leaf. Sir, what about you? Because of me. What do I do? Mission's tearful voice struck at my heart. Outside, they were waiting breathlessly for their chance, like wolves that had cornered their prey. Inside this giant powder keg of a gas station, I had to make a choice. Do I throw this woman to the monsters and save myself? Or do I risk my life in this insane situation? But in 20 years of trucking, I've never once cowardly turned the wheel. I glanced at my wife's photo. It felt as if my wife in the picture was telling me to save her. I gripped the monkey wrench even tighter, and I made up my mind. I decided to take a gamble, rather than be caught here. I grabbed the trembling Mission by the hand and pulled her up roughly. Mission, listen to me carefully. We have to get out of here right now. Those guys will really set this place on fire. I took her and headed toward the backyard, where my old compact car was parked. While they were watching the front gate on the highway, we had to make a move through the back. But their surveillance was more meticulous than I thought. Sir, they're watching everything. What do we do? It's all over now. Mishan grabbed onto my pant leg and wailed, like she'd completely lost her mind. But I am Kim Young-soo, a man who has seen it all on the asphalt for 20 years. I felt it instinctively. If we gave up here, she would die and my life would be finished right here too. I thought hard about how they knew we were here and called us, and there was only one answer. Ms. Mi-sun, you have your cell phone, don't you? Take it out right now. As I shouted, Miss Mi-sun took out an old flip phone from her skirt pocket with trembling hands. It was wet from the rain and the screen was flickering. It was obvious that it was either being tracked or they had planted an app on it. If we keep this, they'll catch us wherever we go. Give it here. I snatched the phone from her hand. I threw it on the floor and smashed it mercilessly with the heavy monkey wrench I was holding. With a crackling sound, the screen shattered and the circuit board popped out. I didn't stop there. I stomped the broken remains into the floor. That's it. Now we are ghosts. Let's get out of their sight. I wrapped my arm around the trembling Ms. Mi-sun's shoulders and headed toward the backyard behind the office. That black van was still lurking like a viper, lights off on the main road by the front entrance where the pumps are. In the corner of the yard, the old compact car I use for commuting stood in the rain. It's a toy for someone who drives a 25-ton truck, but today, this thing was our lifeline. Get in fast. I pushed Ms. Mi-sun down and tucked her deep into the passenger side floor. I covered her head with my work jacket just in case anyone saw her through the window. I sat in the driver's seat and held my breath. I had to start the engine without them noticing. Please, buddy. Please start on the first try. I turned the key with a prayer in my heart. Vroom. Luckily, the engine sputtered to life. I didn't turn on the headlights. Turning them on would be like advertising my location to them. Burying the engine noise under the sound of rain and thunder, I slowly rolled the car toward the narrow farm road behind the gas station. The tension inside the car was ready to snap. Ms. Mi-sun's heavy breathing felt like it was hitting my own chest. As I left the gas station and turned onto the dark dirt road, I checked the rearview mirror. Fortunately, their van was still facing the front entrance, not moving an inch. Meh. That's it for now. Just hang in there a little longer. Our top priority is to get away from here. With my eyes adjusted to the dark, I drove to the junction of the National Highway without turning on the lights. I couldn't see much without the wipers, but after 20 years of driving, you don't lose that touch. Feeling the curves of the road with my body, I slid onto the highway like a black shadow. The unlit national highway looked like a monster with its giant jaws wide open. Rain poured down as if to block our path, and the car was filled with the fishy scent of Mision's wet clothes and the smell of fear. I pressed down on the accelerator pedal cautiously. As it began to pick up speed, the car body shook violently, but I couldn't stop. Once I felt we had put some distance between us, I finally turned on just the taillights. Everything was pitch black and I couldn't see a thing beyond 100 meters. Did we lose them? Or do they not even know we've escaped yet? Boss, are we okay now? We're gonna make it, right? Misan asked from under her jacket in a tiny, trembling voice. I gripped the steering wheel tightly and answered, "We have to live. There's no law that says we have to die. I'll get you to Busan somehow, so don't worry." Had I been driving through the darkness for about 10 minutes like that? Just as I thought I could finally catch my breath, I glanced at the rearview mirror and felt my heart stop. Far behind us, 2 headlights flashed like the eyes of a hungry wolf, speeding toward us with terrifying velocity. Riyahasa, wheel. Boss behind us. The lights. Mission, who was huddled on the passenger side floor, screamed. My eyes trembled uncontrollably as I looked into the mirror. It's those guys from before. They were racing toward us with their high beams on, the light cutting through the rain and blinding the inside of my car. It felt like a massive beast was opening its jaws to swallow us whole. These persistent bastards. They're really determined, aren't they? I floored the accelerator, but the old compact car's engine just screamed, unable to match the speed of the heavy van trailing us. They intentionally kept bumping my rear bumper to threaten me. Every time the car swayed, Mission would scream, clutching her head. "Pull over, old man. I'm not. If you don't stop, we're all gonna die." It felt like I could hear their shouts cutting through the sound of the rain. They pulled up alongside my car and began pushing me toward the guardrail on the side of the road. The tires shrieked as they slid across the wet road. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before we tumbled off the cliff by the highway. "Kim Young-soo, pull yourself together. You've been behind the wheel for 20 years, don't lose your nerve now." I gripped the steering wheel tight and glared ahead. Memories of driving heavy trucks across every mountain pass in the country came flooding back. I saw a fork in the road ahead leading to a narrow mountain trail. It was a steep, rough, unpaved path with no guardrails that a cargo truck wouldn't even dare to enter. Without even signaling, I jerked the steering wheel hard. "Mission, hold on tight." My car took a sharp 90-degree turn onto the mountain road. The van was too bulky to turn as nimbly as mine, and it hesitated for a moment. I didn't miss that split second. I downshifted to first gear and climbed the muddy path. Ali path. My wheels spun, spraying mud everywhere, but I floored the accelerator until the engine roared. The mountain road was pitch black. Only my headlights cut through the heavy rain, and the road dropped off into a cliff right beside us. The van caught up, tailgating me closely while blaring its horn aggressively. Their searchlights were burning hot against the back of my head. But this mountain road was like my own backyard. Through the winding hairpin turns, I steered by shifting gears and handling rather than braking, throwing the car into the curves. "Boss, please save me. Mission's tearful prayers filled the entire car. I didn't even have the luxury to answer her. A sharp curve appeared ahead with water pouring down like a waterfall. They pushed forward without slowing down, but I hit the accelerator while steering in the opposite direction. My car narrowly made the turn while the van behind slipped on the rein and slammed hard into the mountain wall. Nasa ila. In my rearview mirror, I saw their headlights tilt to one side and come to a halt. Their curses faded, drowned out by the sound of the rain. I didn't stop there. I drove deeper into the forest road with my lights off. When the engine noise died down and only the rain remained, I finally let my forehead drop onto the steering wheel. My palms were drenched in sweat, and my muscles were trembling all over. I lost them. You're safe now, Mission. At my words, Mission carefully lifted her head on. Her face was streaked with tears and sweat, and she seemed too terrified to speak. We sat there in the darkness, holding our breath for a long time. Their pursuit had stopped, but we still had a long way to go. The rain began to let up little by little by little. However, the cold dawn air seeped into the car, and Mission's wet body began to shake like leaf. Fearing they might resume the chase, I turned the car and headed toward a small town over the mountain. Crowded places were actually more dangerous. I pulled the car over in front of a shabby motel on the edge of town where the lights were dim. I pushed a few bills across the counter of the run-down motel, lit sign flickering to get a room in the corner. The innkeeper, having just woken up, scanned us with sleepy, half-closed eyes. The woman in the wet floral dress and my disheveled appearance must have looked as suspicious, but who cares? Evading those guys right now was the top priority. As I opened the door at the top of the creaky wooden stairs, a musty smell of mold hit us. Miss me, son, come inside for now. They won't be able to follow us here. As soon as she locked the door, the woman collapsed onto the floor. Perhaps because her adrenaline had worn off, she was shaking like a leaf. I acted as calm as I could and took out the medicine I'd grabbed from the convenience store. Then I pressed the button on the kettle to boil some water. Come here. I need to put medicine on your arm and shoulder, or it'll get infected. Want it, The woman hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed. As I unscrewed the ointment, she carefully rolled up her wet sleeve. The situation was even more gruesome than it had looked under the gas station lights. Dried blood was matted between the deep blue bruises, and the cigarette burns were red and inflamed. Those heartless bastards. A curse word slipped out before I could stop it. I dabbed the ointment on a cotton swab and brought it to her wounds. My rough fingers, calloused from 20 years behind the wheel, were shaking so much that I was afraid to even breathe, terrified I might hurt her. Raon. As the ointment touched her skin, she let out a sharp gasp and hunched her shoulders. I'm sorry. Just bear with it for a moment. It'll be over soon. As I carefully applied the medicine, my vision kept blurring. I couldn't help but see the frail back of my wife, who had battled cancer in a cold hospital room 3 years ago. I used to apply medicine for her just like this back then. I would touch her skin, withered from chemotherapy, and weep inside 1,000 times, apologizing for not being able to protect her. Honey, looking at this person keeps making me think of you. You must have been in this much pain too. You must have been this terrified. As if atoning for everything I couldn't do for my wife, I tended to each and every one of Ms. Mi-sun's wounds. I spread ointment over the bruises and carefully applied bandages to the infected spots. Though her body was stiff at first, she gradually relaxed as my touch continued. Then she grabbed the hem of my shirt and began to weep silently. Sir, why are you going this far for me, as far for me? What am I to you? Don't say things like that. Every human life is precious, so why wouldn't yours be? If my wife were still alive, she would have been just like this. Suffering all alone and bearing it all so foolishly. I soaked a towel in warm water and wiped the muddy grime off her hands. Her rough knuckles and cracked fingernails, those hands that had clearly lived through so much hardship, felt just like holding my wife's hands again, and my nose began to sting with tears. Inside the room, only the sound of an old kettle boiling and Ms. Mision's muffled sobs could be heard. It was still raining outside, but at least this old damp room felt like the safest island in the world. After I finished applying the medicine, I covered her shoulders again with the thick jacket I had been wearing. There, now lie down and get some sleep. You need to keep your strength up to go to Busan tomorrow. I'll keep watch by the door over there, so don't worry and get some rest. I laid out a spot by the entrance door and placed the monkey wrench beside me. I was prepared to give my life if those guys broke in. Miss Mission looked at me for a long time, then buried her face in the jacket I gave her and curled up. The dawn air was cold, but strangely, my heart felt warm for the first time in a while. I never knew before that being able to protect someone or tend to someone's wounds could be such an overwhelming feeling. That storm-like night passed, and it was around the time the dim dawn light began to shine through the window. I opened my eyes wide at the faint sound of water coming from the bathroom. I opened my eyes to the dim light of the approaching dawn. I must have fallen asleep while leaning my back against the door of the old inn-room holding the monkey wrench. Every joint in my body ached and felt heavy, but as soon as I came to, I checked the bed first. But Miss Mission, who should have been there, was nowhere to be seen. Miss Mission? Miss Mission? My heart sank instantly. Did those guys find us? I jumped up, wondering if she had run away without me knowing, but I heard the rhythmic splashing of water coming from the bathroom. I carefully approached and peeked through the door. But upon seeing the scene unfolding inside, I was left stunned. Squatting on the cold tile floor of the narrow old bathroom wasn't Ms. Mission, hand-washing a pile of my sweat-soaked shirts and socks. With the sleeves of the loose t-shirt I lent her last night rolled up, she was meticulously scrubbing the clothes with her bruised arms and soap. Miss Mission, you're not even fully recovered. What are you doing here? At my shout, Miss Mission turned around, startled. Morning sunlight shone through the small bathroom window onto her face. Despite her eyes being swollen from crying all night, she smiled shyly at me, even though her hands were bright red from the cold water. Oh, you're awake, sir. Your clothes were so dirty, and this was the only thing I could do for you. I was so grateful. It was too much to just walk away. And hearing that made my nose sting. Is this woman a fool, She nearly died last night and is covered in bruises, so why is she doing laundry by hand in the freezing cold water at dawn, just because she had a bowl of noodles and spent one night here? Watching her hunched back, and those slender fingers covered in soap suds, I felt a strange emotion. In a world where everyone is busy looking out for themselves, she was thinking about how to repay a kindness, even in that desperate moment of escaping a hellish pit. She looked so pure and transparent, like a child, untouched by the world, or perhaps like a wife who spent her whole life giving to others. Hey there, Ms. Mission. Washing machines are meant for laundry, not people. Come out quickly. Your hands are gonna crack. I spoke bluntly as I helped her stand up. Miss Mission still looked regretful, saying she had almost finished tea. As she brought out the wet clothes in a basin, the scent of soap gently filled the small motel room. She must have scrubbed so hard to get out the grime mixed with my sweat and grease, as the old shirt looked as stiff as a new one. Her foolish behavior made me even more determined. I couldn't let such a pure woman fall back into the hands of those beasts. No matter how rotten the world is, shouldn't a real man be able to protect at least one person like this? I packed our things, stuffing the damp clothes into a plastic bag. All right, let's really head to Busan now. Because if they're looking, they'll be searching with their eyes on fire. Miss Mission put my jacket back on and followed me out. Morning dew had settled on the old compact car, parked in the motel yard. Before getting into the car, Miss Mission bowed briefly toward the motel room, as if that narrow, cold room were a cradle that had saved her life. We set out on the road again. The rain that fell all night had stopped, but the road was blanketed in thick fog. On the way to Busan, one final major gateway was waiting for us. I could see flashing police lights in the distance at the end of the national highway. It was a checkpoint. Miss Mission, keep your head down, lower. Don't make eye contact. The moment I saw those red and blue lights flashing far ahead at the junction to the Busan highway, my heart started pounding like a fuel pump. I wondered what kind of checkpoint this was at such an early hour. All sorts of thoughts crossed my mind. Was there an accident, or did that beast of a husband use his connections to put out an APB on her? What do I do, sir? If they catch me, I'm really gonna die. Crouched on the floor of the passenger seat, Ms. Mission's voice was trembling uncontrollably. Even though she curled up under an old jacket, I couldn't hide her rain-soaked, disheveled appearance or the hem of her floral dress. The moment the officer told me to roll down the window, it was all going to be over. I slowly drove the car toward the checkpoint. A young officer in a fluorescent vest waved his signal baton and pulled me over. As I rolled down the window, the cold dawn air and the officer's sharp gaze rushed in. Excuse me, could you show me your ID and tell me where you're headed? The officer's eyes naturally drifted toward the passenger seat. He had seen the shape of a person huddled there. Cold sweat poured down my back like a waterfall. If I hesitated here, he was bound to tell me to get out. I gripped the steering wheel tightly and began an act I had never performed in my life. Oh yes. Officer, you see, today is my wife's Memorial Day. I'm on my way down to Busan. I deepened my voice as much as I could and put on the expression of a widower who had lost everything. The officer narrowed his eyes and pointed to the passenger seat. Who is that person sitting next to you? She looks a bit strange, and I thought my heart would stop. Right then. In that split second, what flashed through my mind were the wet clothes on the back seat that Mizian had carefully washed for me that morning. I pretended to be on the verge of tears and continued, "Oh, officer, that is my late wife's belongings. Since it's her Memorial Day, I'm heading to my hometown's ancestral land to scatter the clothes and items she cherished. The rain and wind are so strong that I wrapped them up tight so they wouldn't get wet. I'm being a bit dramatic. Aren't I, Mia?" I pointed to the plastic bag in the back seat and let out a fake cough. The clean shirts and socks that Miss Yon had washed in cold water at dawn were slightly visible above the bag. The officer hesitated for a moment, then quickly scanned the inside of the car with his flashlight. Misan didn't move an inch, holding her breath. Inside the jacket. Ah, I see. The weather is bad, so you must be very heartbroken. Still, you must drive safely. Cars are piling up behind you, so please be on your way. The officer waved his baton and opened the way for me. The few seconds it took to press the accelerator and pass the checkpoint felt as long as several years. Only after confirming that the checkpoint was 100 meters behind me did I release my bated breath. Phew, we made it. Mishan, you can get up now. Missian's face as she lifted her head from inside the jacket was streaked with tears. Even though she knew my lie about it being my late wife's belongings was a fabrication, it seemed to have touched her heart. Or perhaps it might not have been a lie after all. The regret of not being able to save my wife has turned into the will to protect this woman. Sir, you must have loved very much. I'm sorry for making you talk about that because of me. There's nothing to be sorry about. Let's just say one life saved by the dead is enough. My wife up in heaven will probably praise me for doing a good job. I gave a hearty laugh and turned the steering wheel toward Busan. We were over the biggest hurdle now. But arriving in Busan didn't mean everything was over. There was no telling when or where those beasts might show up again. Instead of the navigation system, I relied on old highways stored in my head and picked up speed. The fog lifted and a breeze mixed with the scent of the sea began to blow. Busan, where Miss Sun's daughter was waiting, was getting closer. But the relief was short-lived. A familiar engine sound, different from the one at the checkpoint, began to echo from far behind. Bikiri, echo from far behind. After pushing through the fog, I finally set foot on Busan soil. Passing by the harbor filled with shipping containers and the salty air, I stopped the car at the entrance of the old hillside village Mi-sun mentioned. Perhaps because we were on the verge of death all night, my old compact car's engine was ticking and emitting intense heat. Sir, we're here. Thank you so much. I will never forget this kindness for the rest of my life. Mi-sun paused before opening the car door and looked back at me. The terror that had plagued her all night was gone, replaced, mixed by a gaze mixed with the relief of seeing her daughter and apology toward me. With gigantic sniffling hands, she rummaged through her skirt pocket and pulled out the 3 crisp 10,000 won bills I had given her at the gas station, offering them to me. Sir, please take this back. To me, what you did last night is worth more than tens of millions of won. I simply cannot accept this. Seeing the crumpled 30,000 won, a corner of my heart ached. She was still feeling sorry for that tragic promise she made to earn money by selling her body via oresikra. I pushed her hand away firmly. Look here. Misan, do you think I came all this way for that money? Put that money away. Don't you need to go and buy your daughter something delicious to eat? I pulled out an old envelope I had hidden deep inside the car's dashboard. Inside was 300,000 won I had diligently saved while driving my truck, just in case of an accident or emergency. For a widower like me, it was a large sum of money, practically my entire fortune, more than a month's living expenses. I forced it into Misan's hand. What is this, sir? No, I can't take this. Absolutely not. Misan was startled and tried to return the envelope to me. But I grabbed her hands tightly and wouldn't let go. Just take it. Think of it not as me giving it to you as your boss, but as my late wife asking me to pass this on. Even with this money, it won't be nearly enough for you and your daughter to find a room in this city, so don't refuse. It's for my own peace of mind. Big, heavy tears fell from Mision's eyes once again. The woman who had once offered her services for 30,000 won was now breaking down in front of 300,000 won worth of sincerity. Her tears fell hotly onto my rough hands, worn down by over 20 years of working with grease. I forced a blunt expression and practically pushed her out of the car. Go on, quickly. It looks like someone is waiting for you up there. Under a streetlight up the alley, a young girl was looking down, anxiously. It was clearly her daughter waiting for her mother. Clutching the envelope to her chest, Miss Sion kept looking back and bowing to me. Then she suddenly began running toward her daughter like a madwoman. I watched through the rearview mirror as the mother and daughter hugged and sat on the street sobbing. It felt as if something that had been stuck deep in my chest had finally cleared. 300,000 won. It might be money that disappears after a night of drinking for some, but I wanted to believe it was a seed of hope for a new life for someone tonight. I lit a cigarette, watching the two of them walking away. My hands were still trembling a little in the lightest glow. Now my role was finished. I shifted into reverse and quiet, out of the alley. But just as I was about to reach the main road, I saw a familiar pair of headlights about 100 meters away. Could those beastly men have followed her all the way here, dear? Veins stood out on the back of my hand again. After leaving that narrow alley in Busan that dawn, things were very difficult for a while. Terrified they might return, I kept a monkey wrench by my bedside every night, and my heart sank whenever a restricted number called the gas station. But as they say, time heals. After a few seasons passed, the memories of that terrible night began to fade. Then it happened one day. Just like any other day, I was wearing my grease-stained work clothes, leaning back in my office chair and had the radio on. Outside, it was drizzling just like that day, a year ago. As I smoked and blankly watched the rain, a familiar yet unfamiliar, very gentle voice began to drift from the radio. Hello. I am a mother running a small diner in Busan. I'm sending this story today because I want to express my deepest gratitude to the person who saved my life a year ago. For a moment, I thought my heart had stopped. It was unmistakably the voice of that woman crying and pleading for help mixed with the sound of the rain. I leaned my ear close to the radio speaker, forgetting the cigarette I was holding. The gas station owner who helped me without any conditions that night as I stood on the threshold of death in the rain without an umbrella. With those 300,000 won, the owner pressed into my hand. My daughter and I were able to stand on our own feet again. I ran to a place those people couldn't reach, worked day and night, and finally opened a small place of my own. I named the shop Young Soon's Diner, taking it from the owner's name. I combined the young from his name with the end of mine, so I would never forget his kindness. As the radio DJ marveled at the heartwarming story, tears I've been holding back burst from my eyes. 300,000 won. It might not be a large sum to some, but I couldn't believe that money had rebuilt a woman's collapsed life and protected a child's dream. Above all, hearing that she had overcome such hellish trauma and was now living proudly as the owner of Young Soon's Diner made me feel as if the heavy burden I'd carried in my heart for a year was finally lifted. You did well, me son. You truly did well, I muttered to myself, looking at my wife's photograph. Honey, you saw that, right? Instead of you, I saved a life. I think it's okay for you to praise me now, right? My wife in the photo was still looking at me with her kind smile. The sound of the rain was still loud, but it didn't scare me anymore. Instead, it sounded like refreshing clean water, washing away old dirt. No matter how full the world is of beastly people, someone will always reach out a hand in that darkness, and someone will take that hand to rise again. Today, a connection that began with the despair of 30,000 won has returned as the hope of 300,000 won. I feel like I will have a warmer night than ever before. Everyone, how was the story of Misan, the uninvited guest at the gas station, that I shared today? Like the heavy rain pouring down on a dark night, unavoidable trials often come into our lives as well. But this story seems to show that in that darkness, a simple choco pie or a warm act of kindness offered by someone can change a person's life. I hope Mr. Young Soon's blunt yet warm sincerity reaches your hearts as well. Isn't there someone around you shivering in the rain tonight? A little bit of interest creates miracles. Your likes and subscriptions are a huge help in spreading these heartwarming stories further. If you turn on notifications, you can be the first to see our next touching and thrilling story. What are your thoughts on this? Please leave a message of support for Mr. Young Soo in the comments or share your own miraculous stories. I will read each and every one of them with care and reply to you. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this long story. I hope you have another peaceful and warm night tonight. This has been your storyteller who touches your heart. Thank you.